should something happen to the wildlife. And something is happening. Hundreds of elephants and rhinos are being killed every day and are at risk of extinction due to one cause: poaching. Illegal poaching is a $5 billion a year enterprise, one of the world's most dangerous and lucrative activities. Just last year, over 40,000 elephants were butchered for the sale of ivory trinkets. A single rhino horn can fetch more than $500,000 in Vietnam. Terrorist groups such as Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab, as well as corrupt governments, use this illegal trade to fund their criminal activities. Battling these outlaw poachers, hundreds of rangers have been killed, villages threatened, families separated, and businesses destroyed. At the current rate of slaughter, these animals will be gone in just 10 years. Africa will change. National parks will disappear. The economy of local villages will plummet, taking a devastating human toll. Conventional methods are not stopping the poaching, but there is something else. The Lindbergh Foundation's Air Shepherd initiative presents a revolutionary drone-based solution that is 100% effective. Poachers operating under cover of darkness have been impossible to find until now. Air Shepherd flies unmanned drones with infrared cameras and GPS systems, sending thermal images of wildlife and poachers. With information from these drones, ground operators steer rangers into place, intercepting poachers before they strike. They're electric, silent, invisible, and they get the job done. Developed and tested for 2 years, with over 1,000 hours of test flights, multiple teams are now flying in South Africa. 6 other countries are asking for help. Air Shepherd's drones can prevent the extinction of elephants and rhinos, and with that, save the economy and the livelihoods of residents who rely on all aspects of wildlife tourism. We're up, we're flying. Air Shepherd drones are revolutionizing the future for both wildlife and humans.
Well, that's the kind of general overview of what we're involved in, and what I'd like to do is talk to you about some of the details here, but let me give you some history first of all. Charles Lindbergh and Anne Lindbergh were aviation pioneers. If you're of a certain age, you know that. I keep running into young people who've never heard of them. But Charles, in May of 1927, was the first person to fly single-handedly across the Atlantic Ocean. By the way, we're celebrating the 90th anniversary of this flight next May, and we're going to have big events in Paris and then New York, and it's going to be a good time. And then from then on, his wife started to fly with him, Anne. And they literally were the pioneers who established the early international airline routes for many places in the world, including this first time from New York to what they call north to the Orient. They headed north through Alaska and came down into the Orient. What a lot of folks don't know is that the Lindberghs were very interested in environmental things. And a year after Charles died, a number of his friends, including Sir Edmund Hillary and Jimmy Doolittle and Neil Armstrong, among others, got together and they formed the Lindbergh Foundation to carry on this legacy of what the Lindberghs call balancing technology with the environment. And so for now almost 40 years, we have given gifts and provided grants for research projects of various kinds all over the world that had some aspect of balancing technology and the environment. And about 4 years ago, we reprogrammed the organization and focused it in a new direction to focus on aviation-oriented projects, because what we kept finding out is that we'd go in and talk to somebody the chairman of Cessna, for instance. I've got a whole lot of aviators on my board, and so we'd have access, and he'd say, and what kind of projects are you doing? And we'd say, well, we're doing these things with snail darters over somewhere. And he said, why are you talking to me? And so what we really decided was that there was a unique kind of place where we could play, where we could bring this focus that we have into particularly projects that have something to do with aviation. And so we've done that for a long time. And we have been working we started working in Kenya. And we provided airplanes, a couple of airplanes for the Kenya Wildlife Service in their air wing. And we've gotten them, and this is a guy darting an elephant. And we most recently got them night vision goggles so that they could fly at night. But I'm here to tell you that I wouldn't fly at night with them in night vision goggles over there. But in any case, somebody needs to do things like that. There's a lot of problems, of course, by flying airplanes in Africa that are unique to Africa, like running into a giraffe on the runway. But the big issue, of course, is this notion of poaching. I was together with a representative from Kenya Wildlife Service about 3.5 years ago. And he was telling me about, and we were talking about his air wing, and he was telling me how the poachers were shooting his pilots. And he was saying separately that we crashed an airplane and the pilot died. Well, I've built airplanes, I fly airplanes, I know about airplanes, and I know how expensive they are and all the problems of maintenance and other things associated with airplanes. And then he said, and of course we can't fly at night, and we own the daytime and the poachers own the night. Well, all the poaching gets done at nighttime. And so there's this kind of mismatch in the whole kind of equation about how they're approaching these things. And it occurred to me at the time that maybe drones could be used because I knew that you could put infrared packages on the drones and that you could fly them at night. And they were a whole lot cheaper and easier to deal with, and nobody got killed when, if they happened to be shooting at them and so on. So I ran around the country and talked to about 6 different drone manufacturers to say, does this all make sense? And they said, sure, it makes sense. Just give us $2 million and we'll give you the same thing we give to the military. And I said, yeah, that doesn't work for us. And so I worked it backwards and started to find out that there were small platforms that could be used and that were very, very capable. And we began a relationship that we started, a program that we started at the Lindbergh Foundation called Air Shepherd. And Air Shepherd exists to provide, we have a principal relationship with UAV and Drone Solutions, which is a operating company in South Africa. And when I started looking into this to find out who we could work with, what I found out was that these guys by then, and this was a year ago December, by then they had already flown 600 hours and something like 400 missions and were in training, and had invested $2 million, of which $1 million was their own money, in developing the technology and the tactics and understanding how this all worked. They went through, we're now on the 5th generation of aircraft. They started with multicopters and found out that they didn't have enough endurance, couldn't get to where they needed to go. They went to a fixed wing airplane, and a typical one off the shelf, and found out that there were problems with that. They designed their own version of one that I'll tell you about. And we're now up to the 4th or the 5th generation, and now we have an airplane that's a purpose-built one that we designed ourselves that flies for almost 5 hours on a single charge and can operate within a 50 kilometer radius. But UDS now, these are wonderful people, and they're very dedicated, and by now, we have flown 6,000 hours and about 4,000 missions, and there is no one in the world that is even close to having that kind of experience and that kind of in tactics and so on. It takes 4 months to train one of our pilots and our sensor operators just to get to the place to where they're effective. We work with other nonprofits in in the area and otherwise. We work with Peace Parks Foundation, and we work with World Wildlife Fund. World Wildlife has got what's left of a $5 million grant that they got from the Google Foundation, and we are partnering with them, and they're helping to fund some of the new operations that we're doing in Malawi and in Zimbabwe. We are interested primarily in elephants and rhinos for some kind of obvious reasons. First of all, as I mentioned in the video, there were 40,000 elephants killed last year by poachers, and 40,000 the year before that, and 30,000 the year before that, and 25,000 the year before that. And at that rate, as it was mentioned, the elephants in the wild are extinct if that continues going into for the next 10 years. You have similar kind of numbers that are associated with rhinos. The elephants what we're finding out is that there's increasing numbers of terrorists and organized crime groups that are involved in this. And everywhere where these red dots are is where there's been a major battle of one sort or another with some either terrorist groups or local insurgents of one sort. And you can see that the green places where the elephants range, and the yellow ones are possible ones, and there's an interface in between there, and there's increasingly involvement across there, and there's involvement because there's so much money involved with this. I'll tell you in a minute, but at the present rate, this red line across here is kind of the extinction rate, the unsustainable. If you have poaching and killing above that level, then the base herd goes down. And as you can see, since 2008, this is just in 2014, there was only 1 year where it wasn't above its unsustainable levels, and it's been that way within the last couple of years as well. There was a wonderful article in National Geographic a while back that talked about kind of the history from 2010 to 2012, 100,000 African elephants were illegally poached, and a whole lot of them in Central Africa and Eastern Africa and Southern Africa. And we have started operations in the southern part of Africa because it was kind of the low-hanging fruit. We have relationships with the government of South Africa. They had been involved in the testing program. They were very interested in this. Our operating partners were in South Africa, and so we started in South Africa, but we're moving our way further north. The elephant poaching is, again, this is just a variation on the same chart. The rhino poaching is similar. It's exponential. It starts here and it's run up, and it's up around 1,300. In South Africa alone, 1,200 and some last year, I believe. And in Zimbabwe and South Africa, it used to be that there was quite a few that were killed. And then it went down to nothing, and then the price started going up, and it's gone up again. And serious problem. In terms of ivory, the number one market for ivory is in China. And interestingly enough, the number two market is the United States. I was invited to go up to New York one day last year and to a Clinton Global Initiative meeting, and they had an elephant action network that some of you may be familiar with. And I was in a little room about this size, and speakers got up and said that within 5 blocks of this place, which was in Grand Central, the Marriott at Grand Central, that you can find stores that are selling illegal ivory. And I thought, God, that's strange. I've never seen any stores selling illegal ivory in Manhattan. And we went out for lunch, went over to 6th Avenue, turned right, and headed north, and a half a block north, we ran into a store that was just like this, that was just full of illegal ivory. And so the problem is not just Chinese, problems in the United States. And the problem is a demand problem as well as a supply problem. And the demand problem is being dealt with and worked on by wonderful people like Rite Aid, Wild Aid, and a number of other wonderful organizations that we're familiar with and who want to cooperate with us. but we work on the demand side. We work on, or on the supply side of the equation, and we try to suppress that. There's also, of course, the horns from rhinos. And rhino horns are amazing. Rhino horns are worth more than gold or silver or cocaine or not quite heroin. A full-up rhino horn at retail on the street level in Vietnam is worth upwards to $750,000. A single horn is $750,000. And two ivory tusks in China are somewhere around 150K or something like that. So I mean, this is really big money. And that's what draws so many people into the thing and has driven the demand up so greatly in the past. And so what we do is we try to do drones. We do drones that little 7-foot wingspan drones that fly exclusively at night. Let me walk you through the kind of the process and how we do this. We, for lots of reasons, and we've tried all kinds of things with catapult launches and other kind of stuff, and let me just tell you that when you operate in the bush and in Africa, it's a really different kind of place. And you just try things and you find out there are a lot of stuff that just doesn't work, and they're really nice ideas to start with. And so what's really important from our point of view is simplicity and effectiveness. And the simplest way that works every time for us, and certainly the cheapest way, is to essentially do a bungee cord it's got a little parachute on the end, so that once the airplane flies, the parachute grabs the air and pulls the bungee off. But you go down, and this nice lady is one of our team members. She's running down, and he's gonna drive a stake into the ground, right? And it's got a big long elastic cord on the end of the end, and you then get the airplane all set up, and you pull it back, stretch it out, and start up the engine, and you send the thing off. I've got some pictures and some videos I'll tell you here about doing this at night. And I'm going to tell you, it's really black and dark out there at night. I've been there. And if you don't have something that's kind of simple and you can get to and work easy, it really complicates things. And so we launch the airplanes by hand. We can, by bungee cord, we can launch them by hand, but you don't get as good a quality of launches and consistent a launch, because if somebody kind of pushes the nose down, then you got the possibility that the thing is going to carve a groove in the ground on its way up. And so there's a hand launch version. There are a lot of kind of local problems that you have in Africa that you don't have other kind of places with warthogs and other such things that are running around. We work out of a mobile command center, and this is all designed by our own guys. The man that was here at Interdrone last year, Rob Hannaford, who's the chief of technology of this operation, and he gave a presentation somebody said on a panel. Rob is an extraordinary electrical engineer and a systems designer and so on. And he's been the brains behind, and by the way, he also has a master's degree in drone design and drone operations. And so what we've got in clearly the most capable people in the whole continent of Africa who understand both the aircraft. They have designed the airplanes, and they've tested the airplanes, and they've designed all of the control systems and the electronics and everything. And so this whole vehicle, this four-wheel drive, in this case it's a Mercedes, but we're now moving into Nissan, some Toyota Land Cruisers and some other things, because in Zimbabwe, where we're starting to operate, it doesn't work very well with this kind of vehicle. But it's just self-contained, and you can take it anywhere. And the typical way in which it starts is that you come to a location. This happens to be a campsite, and so it's not exactly representative. Also, I'll show you some people and some later. But we go out and we set out an operating space in which to assemble the airplanes, and a cart that's got all of the component parts of the airplanes, and put it on on a little rack thing and start to put it together. They are amazingly efficient. I went out with them at night a while back, eight months, January, I guess it was. And it was, you know, it's all 15 minutes or something for them. They're out, boom, 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 and then before, they've done it so many times, and they just get it done really in a hurry, and they put the airplane together, and it starts with the fuselage, of course, and they turn it upside down and start to put the batteries and the other things in. Here is the coaxial camera that we'll talk about here in a minute, but they loaded up with this, and this, by the way, is an airframe basic kind of model. It's the foam work is done in the forming is from Africa, from China, and then we've adapted it rather significantly to our particular situation. But you've got AHRs and batteries and all kinds of things, and we operate on 2 different battery sets. One of them that handles the sensor systems, and one of them that handles the guidance and the navigation and such. So you've got, you know, all of the kind of the rat's nest of wiring that's associated with these. We use an antenna, which those of you who are technically oriented, this is they call it a cloverleaf antenna, but what it is essentially a vertically as well as horizontally polarized antenna, and this is the principal way in which we do guidance and we maintain control of the airplane. And if you're getting a lot of bouncing signals off of other kind of things, then what you really want is things that have full both vertical and horizontal polarization across the whole kind of spectrum. Here's a close-up of the beginning. This is a pitot tube that gives you airspeed. We design all of our and manufacture all of our most of our major component parts. For instance, this pitot tube is all designed and manufactured by 3D manufacturing, 3D printers. This bracket for the gimbal is all designed in ARCAD programs and manufactured, and as well as the gimbal, all are generated at 3D manufacturing. I'll show you later, but we also do our own spheres to mounts for the cameras, and these, of course, are made out of carbon fiber, but all of this is, of course, like I say, is manufactured in our own shop. The camera is a coaxial one that has both daylight and infrared, and we are working on a number of other new technologies, including FLIR. Not FLIR, FLIR helps us, lasers and radars and so on. There's, as you all know probably better than I do, there's this amazing kind of explosion in technology and some radars, synthetic aperture radars on a single chip and so on. And so we're working our way into that kind of space and working very hard to stay very far ahead of the poachers in terms of technology. I keep asking them, I've done a couple of interviews here, and people ask me all the time. I was on BBC last night. They wanted to know, well, what if the poachers jam your airplanes, and what if they do? But they're not even close. But what we know is that we've got to stay really far ahead of them in order to stay ahead, so they can't do anything. And so we have never had any problems. I mean, relatively speaking, they may have some advanced technologies. They have radios and cell phones and things, but they are not into being able to effectively kind of deal with this. We make our own spheres that we mount the cameras in, and we do multiple sizes of them, and as you can see, and we do all the fabrication and all of it. I mean, these guys are pretty amazing. I was impressed anyway. Let's see, this is supposed to, let me see if I can, there we go. And this is not very exciting, but you can see it turns, right? And it goes around, it goes up and down, it does all the things that a gimbal is supposed to do. This is all electric operation because we have to be silent, we have to be invisible, and we do this at night, although we do have lights on the airplane, and we've got a whole bunch of LEDs studded on the bottom of the wings, and so that if we need to, we can suddenly show up in the middle of the night, in the middle of the black, and scare. I mean, there are a lot of the poachers operate clearly with a spiritual kind of perspective that is different than a lot of us do. And if something just shows up in the middle of the night with lights, it's very scary to a lot of them. And so we use it that way sometimes. This version of the airplane, we fly for about 2 hours on a single charge, and we can run it out from about 20 kilometers. But you put, they sit down first of all and start putting it together and put the wings on it and check out the systems and run the motor once and make sure that all the telemetry and all the control systems are working. And then what we do is we've got a mast. I mean, it's very much like the vehicle that's out here. I was talking to those guys yesterday. It's very much like the vehicle that's in the show space here. We got a 40-foot mast, and we run up the mast, and we also have satellite communication, so we can go directly to the satellite, and we can upload stuff from wherever we are because there's no internet out in the middle of the bush. And these are just different pictures of some of the antenna systems. We've got working relationships with a lot of these technology manufacturers, and they help us and provide us with technology and so on. Here's the antenna that provides the main kind of control and communications with the drone. This is all autonomous and follows the drone automatically wherever the airplane's flying. And so once you get it into the air, it just follows it around. That's a vertically polarized VHF antenna, and we use that along with some local, we do a Wi-Fi hotspot and some other kinds of things in order to provide kind of a full spectrum of capabilities, because we do telemetering information, and we've got the video stream that comes back, and we've got the control systems, and so there's multiple kind of signal streams that are a part of this. We also have, of course, anemometer and wind direction indicator, and all that becomes part of the system. We run up the mast and to the full size, and then we launch the airplane with the handheld kind of controller, and then transfer the control over to the inside the control vehicle. Inside the command vehicle we have 3 operating positions. The one on the furthest left is for the pilot, and the next one is the sensor operator, and both of these people, and then the third one is for the rangers. Because we do this with the rangers. It doesn't do any good to sit up there and have an eye in the sky at night and see somebody kill an animal and not be able to do anything about it. And the whole concept of operations, of course, is that you pre-brief and you work very closely with the rangers or the police departments on the ground so that you can decide where you're going to operate, where the threat area is, where the mission's going to be that evening, and so you can then, you're in radio contact with them, so if you see anything that's of interest, you can call them and you can vector them, and they go rapidly to that area. And so we've got a space in the vehicle for the rangers, for a ranger, whoever's playing that kind of a role. This is Andrew, who's one of our pilots, and this is the pilot position, and you can see that it's got typical kind of a airplane kind of presentation that gives you attitude and so on, airspeed and things. And it's got a moving map at the bottom, and you can see this as we go forward. And then the second position is the sensor operator. And the sensor operator essentially runs the camera and in a sense runs the mission after the thing gets started. We do this semi-autonomously. We build a flight plan in advance, knowing about where we're gonna go and where the ranger's gonna be and everything. And so when we launch the airplane, it takes off on its own on a flight plan. And then the sensor operator sits there and looks and is in contact with the rangers, and if we see something that's interesting, then the pilot can take over and can orbit, or they can follow it around or whatever, and change things happen. But the sensor operator is at the center of this thing, because he or she, in both cases, has to do this interlocutors, and you don't have some idea where they likely are, then or if you have some intelligence or some other things, and there's a whole lot of that kind of stuff going on. But it really, really helps if you have some idea, some predictive information based upon historical information and so on. They can give you a sense and says, in this kind of weather, and when the moon is this size, and it's been dry for this long, and these water holes are good, and so on, and it's this close to the road, and so on, then you can isolate this, and you can say, well, tonight we ought to operate here because that's where the big threat area is. That's big data, that's predictive analytics, and like I say, we're working with USC on developing that, because when you start to do that, then you start to stay ahead. I mean, the poachers never get into that kind of space. This is way out in front, and you have really added benefits. And then, by the way, you can hang all kinds of very interesting new sensor systems, including we've tested shot, I forget what they call them, but they listen to rifle shots. And so you sit up there and drive around, and if they shoot something over there, this thing immediately will give you a vector and tell you exactly where it is. And we've got other kind of things that we can't talk about that are interestingly and increasingly sophisticated like that can allow us to know where to go. So anyway, you've got the 3 operating positions. I mean, this is a really self-contained, kind of an amazing piece of gear that they've done. Here's part of the kind of the setup and the screen from the pilot's view. You know, you can do flight plan and setup and set waypoints and all of the kind of things that if you've ever navigated an airplane, they're part of that. And then you can watch the airplane as it flies down the flight path. This, of course, is a daytime thing, so that you can see the daytime, and you can put all kinds of waypoints so it'll turn and move around, and it's a drone. You can do with it all kinds of things that you want, whatever you want to do. And then here's the view out of the camera. We've got routers and telemetry things and all kinds of ways to send the data where we want. We've got generators that operate in addition to the batteries in the car. We have 3D printers. We carry these things, one of them in the back of the vehicle. So if you crater the airplane someday and you break it, and you can manufacture in the field the replacement parts for it. And that's very, very helpful, because a lot of this stuff, as long as it is, I mean, you got to order it. It takes weeks or something. I mean, it's Africa after all. And so here's how it works at night. They have a kind of a local kind of flood lighting to set up an area, and our operators, the pilots, run with a headlight, a light on their head, so that they can see what they're doing. And they've just set up the airplane, and they're testing the lighting on this. They've got 2 lights on the tail, 2 position lights, and nav light, on the port side and the starboard side, and on the wings. We can see them on.
Okay.
I mean, it's black. It's just really
No, if
black.
you don't want to. Okay. Yeah. Well, go out to the light.
And the wind blows. I mean, it's like 30 and 40 knots out there. I mean, sometimes you can't fly because you just can't get there from here with all the air.
Can we run the motor quickly? you down. In 3, 2, 1.
And it's gone. Can't see it. I think we're the only people in the world right now that are not military who are flying beyond line of sight and exclusively at night. And there's just a huge amount of kind of experience that you gather when you do that a lot. So there's the airplane coming back. See that?
It's fine.
Ask me later. Here's some feed from the video from the camera. These are lions. You have to trust me on that. There's a lions, and those are lion cubs right there. Yeah, we turn off the nav lights. Yeah, we don't run them at night, so it's just black, and we turn them on when we come back, when they come back into the lane.
Airspeed is 12, ground speed is 5.
That's a vehicle on the road. Or something, maybe it's something that, no, it's not a vehicle because these are a bunch of animals. I got a couple of other cuts here. What you can see here is that it's pretty easy to see an animal with the thermal signature. Maybe these are the lions, I can't, one of these are the lions, and these are the lion and the mother, and the cubs that you can see. And another one, don't have to tell you what that is. And look at this, you're flying at 1,000, at 3,000 feet almost, 870 meters, and it's that clear. So it's really quite obvious that you can see what you need to see from in the altitudes that we fly and where we fly, and how we fly.
45 kilometers an hour.
You don't have, I don't have to, you don't have to take my word for it, but these are poachers. Caught those up in Kruger Park. So, the way this works is that our teams deploy for lengthy periods of time. Somebody was asking about the cost of this whole thing. It runs about, in rough numbers, about $400,000 a year when you do a full-out kit that's got 3 airplanes and all of the vehicle and all of the consumables and the cost of it, and you amortize the cost of the training and the food and the gas and all of this kind of stuff. And then you need kind of 1.5 teams for every kind of operating position, because these guys, like I say, go stir crazy after a while, and you have to let them go home and get some R&R. And so, but they go out and variously, they some of them live in the bush and they have pull a camper. So it's kind of a 2-vehicle kind of caravan that has their own vehicle and our command vehicle, and they bring along their living conditions behind and set up, and that's what they live out of that for a while. You always have the problems of the local wildlife. Those of you who know anything about elephants know that elephants are fearless, and they go wherever they go, and nobody gets in the way of them. And I've seen everybody backs up and goes away when the elephant comes, because they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do. But anyway, they come and walk right around the place sometimes. We do a lot of training, and we do a lot of education. We bring local folks together. This is a guy who's part of one of the ranger groups, and we work with the rangers at night. Here's some of them from one place, and we work with local officials and explain to them what we do. We work with local community people. These are some ranchers that live in the area in KwaZulu-Natal, and so it's kind of a full-up kind of process of educating folks and making them aware of what we're doing. The elephant range in density, as you can see, except for over here a little bit in West Africa, is mostly up in southern and eastern Africa. And so that's our area of focus. We work up through this area in Africa. And the rhinos, there are two kind of major species of rhinos. One of them is a white rhino, and they're located almost exclusively down in Mozambique and in South Africa and some in Zimbabwe and so on. And the black rhino the range is a little further, but again, you can see that they're generally up this arc from the south to the east. And so where we fly right now, we've got 4 teams flying. And we have one that's in Kruger National Park up here in north of Johannesburg in South Africa. And then we fly in KwaZulu-Natal, which is the province down here north of Durban, up in this area. And this is called Hluhluwe Mpolozi Game Reserve, and that's the place where we have one full-time team. This is a picture of Kruger Park, and Kruger Park, like I say, is a really big place. But something like 80% of the rhinos are all right in here. So we concentrate our time and we fly right here. And this is Mozambique, right across the river. And so a lot of the poachers come across the river and from Mozambique. And so we're trying to work with some of the ranger folks and some of the NGOs and other things that are working on the Mozambique side. Here's a picture of KwaZulu-Natal so that you can see where that is. We're, like I say, we're operating in Zim and in Malawi. We're never going to go away, but at least it wouldn't be existential. And you would, and these animals would have the potential of continuing on. The thing that motivates me about this, by the way, I mean, I'm an engineer and I'm an airplane guy, and I'm surrounded by animal people. I've got all these wonderful folks who work with me and volunteer for me, and they're really wonderful. Some of them like animals more than they like humans, as a matter of fact. But the thing that's really important to me about all of this is that the notion that you could within our lifetime, within a decade, be at a place where these animals that have been so essentially a part of what the human condition is and the human experience is would go away, and they've been around for prehistoric times. I mean, this just is not acceptable. And so, you know, I bring the kind of the technology and the business side of it and so on together, but we have a wonderful network of about a dozen of extremely capable volunteers. We had just one staff person. Our pilots are the first licensed, as best we can tell, first licensed drone pilots in the world. They were licensed, we were the first ones to be licensed by the Civil Aviation Authority of South Africa. They are licensed as commercial airline pilots. That's the way their system works. And our UAV and Drone Solutions here is licensed as a commercial airline, literally. And as I understand it, the United States is just now starting to do waivers to do beyond line of sight nighttime operations. But until then, we were the only, best I can tell, we're the only ones in the world that were doing that kind of stuff. Like I say, what we've got coming up is predictive analytics. We're working on that. We're working on LiDAR kind of capability, because what LiDAR can do, as well as radar perhaps, I'm not quite certain, but LiDAR can get you down through the canopy. So there are places where the animals, particularly in the equatorial area of Congo and the DRC and so on, where the forest elephants operate, and you can't see them with infrared. And so LiDAR is a real opportunity for us. And we're doing, as I said, intelligent pattern recognition things so that we can take the load off of the operators. And so when the system sees something, it throws up a flag, and then the operator can look at it and say, yeah, that's important, or that's not. And we're also working with
some advanced technology for us. Are we out of time? Is that what they're doing? Yeah. And we're trying to do multiple level and swarm kind of things, and, you know, high level kind of looking and lower level ones, and so we're doing, and higher capacity, we're working on some very interesting high capacity batteries. But this is the new airplane that we've got. This will fly almost 5 hours on a single charge, and we can operate it from 50 kilometers away. That's the early version. We also were doing some things with radar and testing this with radar to where the radar doesn't find where the problem is, and then you can send the airplane out and deal with it. We have wonderful partners in World Wildlife and South African Airways and Cisco and FLIR and other kinds of folks and some other folks. So that's who we are, Air Shepherd. We work here in Africa, and we're expanding quickly. We have a major kind of fundraising drive starting on Indiegogo, starting on the 22nd of September. It's going to go into the holiday season, and we hope you'll come and see us. And I'm happy to hang around and answer some questions for those of you who need to run.